Yeah, the NHS almost seems like a national myth, and I love national myths.
Yeah.
That's at least how it comes across. It seems like it was something that was great, and people are clinging on to the idea that it was great, but it's no longer great anymore.
Yeah,
It's
I
tough
think that's
to
good.
shake that.
I think you've nailed it there. I can see as an outsider who doesn't use it anymore, I see the issues with it, but I also still love the fact that people have the opportunity to use it. There's other things that stretched into as well as a lot of people figured out they could get paid more money by going through agencies. So a lot of agency staff now work for the NHS, whereas it would have all been direct employees before. But the NHS needs the staff, and if they can't get direct access to the nurses and doctors, they have to go through these agencies where they pay a lot more money. So it is a complicated matter. I do like the idea of universal healthcare. I know that goes massively against what a number of people, maybe libertarians, think or certain Bitcoiners think because of the problems that causes. But I like the idea that anyone can get access to healthcare, especially the least fortunate.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, it's one of those things I should probably give Stefan Avera a call and say, look, talk to me about this, because he'll have a great explanation as how you can have a different system which still supports people who can't afford healthcare. So, they're probably...
I mean, some of this might be an issue of just nation states more broadly. There's just a lot of people in one place, and we're all being held accountable for each other, but we don't really have a common point of connection.
Yes.
That's what I keep coming back to for almost any issue for the most part.
Expand on that.
I think we're all too big. I think nation states there have been nation states in the past, there have been empires in the past, but it seems like a consequence of our post-industrialized world where, I mean, you can look at the U.S., for example. There's a lot of geography between us. I think we're as united as the Soviet Union was, keyword on union. There isn't a whole lot of commonality between, Florida and California, for example, almost like different countries. Texas and Massachusetts, these almost look like different countries. I think to a certain extent, it's because people are tribal and they're very community oriented. And when you have too many people in one place, it doesn't function as well. And we try and duct tape things together to make it function, but it's kind of bursting. It's kind of leaking through all that.
What's the population in the US? Is it 300 million?
I think 360 or 70 million.
360 million. Well, that's a lot of people to try and centrally plan for.
Yeah.
I've traveled a lot around the US, and the commonality is the language, but there's a lot of differences between somebody I've hung out with in Wyoming and somebody I've hung out with in Malibu.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fundamentally different people with completely different outlooks on life.
Well, and to exacerbate the issue, New York and London have much more in common than New York and like Oshkosh or, Des Moines, Iowa or some other place. Cities just have more in common than they do with their own kin in their own country.
Do you think this is why it's been fracturing?
Yeah, I think it's, a multi-generational thing. It's not like, this is happening in the last 5 years or last couple decades. I think things ebb and flow, and we're naturally just going to move towards a more localized sort of city-state model. I think it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It seems like it's naturally getting to that point because these big countries are just breaking. Yeah.
Sometimes I also think that maybe comes down to like your age as well, because I'm older than you, I think. I started to notice as I get older and I slow down, I want to spend more time locally in my community, helping out and doing things within my community. Whereas I think you're young, you want to get out and see the world and move around and like meet people and go through exciting opportunities. Then you get a bit older and a bit wiser, and you realize actually you can get most of what you need from your local community. Everything you've been taught to believe that you should want to get out of life doesn't really make you happy like you think it will. Like I'm happiest on a Tuesday night going down to Allen Park and watching my daughter train football and being amongst the community and watching all these kids play football and hang out. That's where I'm my happiest. But I used to think I'd be my happiest getting on a plane and flying to California and making a podcast and then going down the beach. And it was fun at the time, but I realized that like it's not fulfilling.
Yeah, it's seemingly attractive, but I think once you do it and once you do it enough, you realize it's actually, and I'm not speaking to your example specifically, but a lot of these things are actually quite empty. I think it's a natural human inclination to want to be around your community. It's like we're tribal, we're animals, we're tribal. I think a lot of the stuff that we see in like the general crypto space more broadly is because money is very tribal. So people become tribal about that too. but you need to have some sort of, weight within a group of people that you may be accountable for, but you can also see a direct output from your input. Like maybe you're employing some people in your local community that fulfills you, that gives you a good sense of, maybe you want to be a tribal leader or some, idea of a tribal leader in your own head. Like that is incredibly fulfilling. It's more fulfilling than, going out to a club in Vegas or in Miami for a couple nights and kind of ending up alone.
Yeah, I mean, you've literally been within my community. You've seen it.
Yeah.
That's where I'm happiest.
It's beautiful, honestly.
And building something for a small group of people that they can get behind and feel happy about. And, one of the things we were talking about last night. Our mayor in Bedford is a fucking moron. He's useless. Dave the mayor, honestly, he's fucking useless. And like, I've been thinking about, maybe that's what I should be, not trying to build this podcast and traveling. Like I should be there in my community doing the job that he can't do and he's doing because nobody else wants it. Maybe that's what I should be doing. Like if you want a legacy, what is it? Do you want your legacy to be someone famous and successful, like did all this shit? Or do you want your legacy to be the change that you made for people? And I think maybe this is another thing coming back to the capitalism. Capitalism and advertising has taught us that the big shiny stuff's important. Mm-hmm. But actually, I think real kind of inner peace and contentment comes from what you've done for other people.
Are you officially announcing you're running for mayor of Bedford?
My official announcement, Dave the mayor, I'm coming for you, motherfucker. I want to do it. My issue, if I show you my Google, so I was Googling last night, is it a full-time job and what's involved? What do you actually have to do? And the amount of things I already found, I think are absolutely ridiculous. But I think it's close to a full-time job.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Which is a problem. So it has to become in a post-what Bitcoin did era. But I will...
I think it depends on the person. I think you would probably make it a full-time job, and maybe the person in the current role isn't treating it as a full-time job.
No, he's honestly is an idiot. Can I get sued for calling someone an idiot?
No.
Okay.
Well, you're in a different country right now, so I think it's fine, right? Like international waters.
No, it doesn't work like that.
No.
But I think you're saying an idiot is fine.
I just don't want to get sued again.
We'll run it past the lawyers.
Run it past the lawyers. Rupert, I'll be okay with this.
But no, to go back to that, I think you're right. Like affecting change in people's lives is really important. On your podcast, you do it at a massive scale. But I really love tactile physical relationships. So if there's only a handful of people whose lives you can directly affect in like a truly life-changing way, then that might be more fulfilling. It depends on the person.
Well, in some ways, this goes back to the Bitcoin thing and trying to explain Bitcoin to people, especially I have to do a lot in my local community now because I have this club and we have Bitcoin badge and we're the Bitcoin team. So I have to explain it to them. But the truth is, like most of the people, the question they want to ask is, or they do ask, is now a good time to buy?
Yeah.
Everyone's worried about buying it and it going down. Everyone wants to buy it, wants to go up. I've been increasingly trying to say to them, the great thing about Bitcoin is the things it teaches you. And by the way, I'm always like behind the curve on it a little bit more than other Bitcoiners, but teaching you that appreciation of money or what money is, or how it works, how it doesn't work, is super fascinating. I mean, it's been great, watching my brother orange pill himself. Mm-hmm. My brother is a Bitcoiner now. Like when he first came in, he was working with us, and he's traditionally on the left, and a lot of things he struggled to get his head around. He now gets it. Like and I've had to do the same. You have to learn about money, and we're in this period of time where everything's fucking breaking. And people keep going, well, the Bitcoiners were right. The Bitcoiners predicted this. The Bitcoiners said this. But also there's this secondary thing where you slow down and you start to realize the important things in life. Again, I'm behind the curve on everyone on this, but you should look after your health. You should eat good food. You should spend time in your community. You should go and see your local farmer. We should stop eating this bullshit food that we've been put in front of us and told is okay. All those things that Bitcoin teaches you outside of the gains, I think actually that's in some ways more important.
Yeah.
Because it structures you towards a better life for you and your family. It gets you away from all the fake bullshit.
You had a guest who said it beautifully. I forgot his name. I think it's Bollinger?
Logan.
Bollinger, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Logan's great.
Yeah, I was just listening to it yesterday, and he said Bitcoin allows you to think about things other than money, or it gives you the opportunity to think about things other than money. And I think that's right. You can't plan for generations in the current system. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And that's also, I mean, just alongside the community aspect, like that is a core part of being human is wanting to plan and care for your family in this case. And it's impossible to do that today. You have to take a second job as a trader. You have to constantly think about You know, like your chance of beating inflation, which is getting harder and harder day by day. In some countries, it's actually impossible. So yeah, I think Bitcoin gives us that opportunity. If I have a long-term perspective, I don't have to worry about things that I would have to worry about otherwise. And that is incredibly freeing. And maybe that's what freedom ultimately looks like.
Yeah, it's some big, and actually, you also have to think about, or for me, and I've found really hard discarding things like an onion, like shedding parts of like my skin of my old life. And there's a lot about to think about with that. Firstly, it's, long-term common held beliefs. Like I'm with somebody who's always loved the role of a journalist and journalism, and coming to the realization that we have very few real journalists left doing proper objective work is mildly depressing. I'm somebody who has absolutely supported democracy for years. We're in a time where it's very hard to support right now, especially in the UK. We've got this fucking idiot as our prime minister. We've got another idiot who's just had his conference recently, Keir Starmer, who's come out with a whole bunch of new policies that Labour are going to put in place. And you realize the cycle's the same. That's a hard skin to shed when you've believed in it for so long. There's so many of these things that it's really difficult to kind of like go. And there's another reason it's difficult is when you start to shed these skins and you start talking to your friends about it, you sound like a nutter.
Yeah, you do.
Like Bitcoiners think I'm a status. My friends think I'm a nutter. They think I'm an absolute crazy person.
Yeah, but that's a good place to be. That's I have this quote that I try not to actually live by it, but it seems like inevitably happens where it's society honors its living conformists and its dead troublemakers.
Ooh.
And I find that,
who's that from?
I don't remember. We can look it up. Maybe
Say that again.
Society honors its living conformists and its dead troublemakers.
Yeah,
and it's usually true. You can look at our history, for example. George Washington was kind of hated during, in his time. You can look at Gandhi, hated as well. Now, depending on the people and depending on who you're looking at, but it seems like people that have sort of maybe contradictory or revolutionary ideas are hated by a large group of people because the status quo is comfortable. You're presenting a radical change in how people fundamentally think about everything on a day-to-day basis, and that's very uncomfortable. And it takes a certain type of person to think that way.
Do you have a favorite quote you ever go to?
I don't have a favorite quote I go to, but one of the things that I do think about all the time is something Mark Moss said on the show, where he said, what was it? For every new law, whether good or bad, means less freedom. And I think that's quite good.
We talked about that a lot, didn't we? Mm-hmm. Because we didn't 100% agree with it.
No, but it's something I just think about a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you say this journalist's name, so I'm going to pull it up here.
Mignon McClarglen.
Oh, that's why I couldn't remember, because I can't pronounce it.
A successful marriage requires falling in love many times, always with the same person. I have a favorite quote. So, do you know Jiddu Krishnamurti?
No.
It's like this Indian philosopher. And this one always stays with me. It never leaves me. He said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." And I've never actually looked up what he meant by that. Maybe you can look it up. But what I read in that is that if you're successful in current society, but your success leads to a net negative impact on other people and the planet, have you really been successful?
Then you have to evaluate what that output is, though, right? That's tough.
Yeah. I just, it makes me think directionally, parts of capitalism have sent us in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clearly obvious.
Well, for some people, I mean, again, like some people like this high time preference life.